Today we are making that beautiful wreath, and you will need 3 lengths of fabric. Mine measure 6 inches by 42 inches, which is the width of the fabric. Now, these did take a lot more stuffing than anticipated, so if you want something that's a little bit easier to manage, I would recommend going with about 4.5 inches for the width, maybe even 4, because they were a little bit heavy on the stuffing. So you're going to fold them in half, and then you're going to sew along one of the short edges and then along the really long edge here. So then you've just got a gap in the very bottom, which is where we will be turning this right sides out. The seam allowance I used was the width of the foot because I am inherently lazy. So you will then want to make sure you've got something to turn your tubes with, and then go ahead and chop off the corners. This is to make sure you got nice, beautiful looking corners, but you won't really see them, so honestly it doesn't really matter. Now, I hope you have a better way for turning your tubes right side out than my horrifically rubbish way. I don't know what I was thinking. This wasn't the easiest way to do this, but it was efficient. It worked. It just was a bit finicky. So turn your tubes the right side out. Now comes the arduous task of stuffing. When I tell you this does take absolutely ages, I ain't lying. I had to go downstairs the next day and finish it downstairs, playing with my son. But I would suggest using the blunt end of your, like I used 15mm knitting needle, and the blunt end worked so much better than the spiky end because the spiky end just sort of pushed through all of the stuffing. Now, you do need more stuffing than you realise. I think I slightly understuffed mine, even though like I used a whole bag of stuffing, because now my one looks a little bit on the floppy side. So just go ahead and start stuffing. You can see here that I did try to use my fingers. This was just ridiculous. Really, they didn't tell you that in the videos of how irritating this stage is. Now, once you've managed to stuff all of your tubes, you can see here mine look a little bit understuffed. You are then going to want to sew up the ends. So you just fold the ends in, the open ends, and then just take your sewing machine. If you can get it under, brilliant. If you can't, you will have to hand sew it, which is somewhat irritating, I know. I did end up having to hand sew these. Which, if you've watched any of my videos, you know I'm usually quite loath to do anything by hand when I can just go stick it under a sewing machine. Now, I want you to just get the 3 ends that you've just sewn together and sort of pin them together or clip them together, and then get a really strong thread, maybe even double it up, and you're going to just sew them together. So each of the little ends, just sew them right up together. Again, this is hand sewing, and I went over mine quite a few times just to make sure it was really sturdy. I do think this is a really important step in the process, so don't be tempted to go low on the stitch count. I would go higher for sure. Now comes the fun bit of plaiting it or plaiting it, depending on where you're from. Now, I definitely under plaited mine. I definitely didn't do enough. I wish I'd done more, and I am tempted to go back and undo all my beautiful, not so beautiful hand stitching and re-plait it. This is a little bit of a pain to do. If you can get someone to sort of hold the top end, that would be fantastic. As you can see here, I should have been a little bit rougher with it, and not so like so not rough. I could have really gone more. So we're just going round and round and round. And the 3 colours, if you use like some really festive coordinating fabrics, I do think it is really beautiful. I do think it would make a really good, what are those things you put behind doors? Door draft excluders. I think it would make a beautiful draft excluder as well. Especially if you put some like heavy beans in it or something like that. So once you have finished plaiting it, you're then basically going to sew the other ends together as well. Also by hand. And woohoo, like magic, we have 2 ends that have been sewn up. Doesn't that look wonderful? Then we have more hand sewing, because you're going to need to sew this lot together. This was not easy. This was just a little bit faffy, and it was a bit difficult to get the needles in and get it the right angle, but eventually we do get there. please don't judge my stitching. It was quite terrible, as you can see. Now, I definitely could have done with a few more plaits. I then just sort of like tried to turn it round so you couldn't see the hand stitching. I'm not sure this made it look any better, to be honest, but then you can go ahead and make a beautiful fabric bow. Unfortunately, this was not something I did because I just couldn't be bothered, not gonna lie. Plus, I have a ton of ribbon. So I just tied a really thick piece of ribbon round just to hide that join at the top and try to make it vaguely look okay. Plus you need something to like hang it from as well. So I didn't have enough to do a beautiful bow. And then I got some thinner ribbon, and this was to put a bow on. Maybe I should have used the thinner ribbon to tie off the top and then use the thicker ribbon to make the bow. But at this point, I was just freewheeling. I was making it up as I go along. I cannot tie bows. Like those beautiful bows you see online where people just tie them absolutely beautifully. It's not a skill I have. My fingers just don't do what my brain wants. Despite the fact that I was in the Merchant Navy and have a qualification in tying knots. You would not believe it from this video. And then, so I just sort of tied a bow, and then I attached a hook to the inside of my window frame and then just sort of hooked it on. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. That is your lot. It doesn't look too bad for something that's relatively easy to make. Just an absolute pain in the hoop to fill with stuffing. So there you go. I hope this has inspired you to make your own, hopefully slightly better looking wreath. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.